Educational GMAT. Your partner in your GMAT journey.
All right. So if you have gone through the argument, what is the first thing, friends? The main conclusion. What's the main point that the argument is trying to prove? So what do you think is the main point?
That there is no mismanagement in Burton.
All right. Very nice. Very nice. Very nice. So in other words, the investors' criticism of management, of Burton's management, is that justified or not justified
Not
according to the
justified.
argument?
Not
Not
justified.
justified, right? So in this case, by the way, what does it mean here? Investors sniping at management, right? So this is the main point of the argument, that in this case, the investors sniping as in, I mean, criticism of Burton's management is not justified. All right, good. Next, what do we do? So, okay, let me actually write this as the main conclusion, MC. Next, what do we do, friends? The role of the first boldface, the role of the second boldface. And what do we mean by role? Is that a premise or a conclusion? First boldface, premise or conclusion? Obviously, it's the conclusion. In fact, it's the main conclusion. Obviously, in some sense, a conclusion will support, main conclusion obviously will support itself. How about second boldface? What do you guys think? Premise or conclusion?
It supports the main conclusion.
It supports the main conclusion. Absolutely, it supports the main conclusion. So, but fine. Let's also think about it. Is that a fact or an opinion? Let's put it this way. Second boldface. I have some doubts on this, right? Let us say I have some doubts on this, whether it is someone's opinion or a fact, right? So let's keep this as a placeholder. In any case, tell me, is the second boldface supporting or opposing the main conclusion?
Supporting.
As we notice, it's supporting, right? So whatever information that you confidently have, mention that and then look at the answer choices. Now notice, why can someone quickly tell me why is alpha incorrect?
Because it's saying that the first one is supporting the conclusion, but first one is the
Evidence
main.
to support. There is no evidence, right? First is the main conclusion itself.
Yeah.
Right. And by the way, evidence, another thing is evidence. If you remember, we discussed evidence is a fact, while a conclusion cannot be a fact. Right. Remember, the first boldface is a conclusion, right? So it cannot be an evidence. Okay. So alpha gone. Now let us look at Baker. First, okay, this seems quite promising, right?
Yeah.
The first states the conclusion of the argument as a whole. So this seems okay. All right. Notice the second states an intermediate conclusion that is drawn to in order to support that conclusion. This seems completely fine to me as of now,
Yeah.
right? So let's keep this. Okay, let's look at Charlie now. First is a position. Okay, can someone tell me why is Charlie wrong?
Because it is saying that the first is opposing the argument.
Opposing,
Second is
right?
not.
While we obviously first is the main conclusion, so it would support itself. Good. Okay, David. Notice first states an intermediate conclusion is incorrect. First is not an intermediate conclusion, it's the main conclusion. And similarly, notice first and second both state intermediate conclusions, gone. And hence Baker is the right answer. Now, for those of you who are still wondering what the difference is between an intermediate conclusion and a main conclusion, what do you think is the difference? Intermediate conclusion and the main conclusion. Both are conclusions, right? And what does it mean by conclusion? Opinion, uh, view, claim, belief, stance, right? All these are conclusions. But what's the difference between the main conclusion and an intermediate conclusion? Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. All right. Rahul, since he joined late, Rahul ran a marathon. He must be tired. He must be tired. So he needs rest. All right. So this is the argument. Now, I think it'll be, remember, we also discussed it that there will always be only one main conclusion of the argument. Can you guys identify the main conclusion of the argument? Of this argument? Main conclusion, friends.
He needs rest.
Absolutely, right? So this is the main conclusion. All right. Okay. First sentence, premise or conclusion? In fact, it's obviously a fact. And remember, all facts will be premises, right? So this is a premise. How about this sentence? Tell me, is that a fact or is it an opinion?
Opinion.
It's an opinion, right? But then clearly this is not the main conclusion. So what is this? An intermediate conclusion acting as a premise, right? Why acting as a premise? Because as we discussed, premise is any piece of information that supports the conclusion. So this obviously supports this conclusion. And it's not a fact, right? So it's an intermediate conclusion acting as a premise. All right. Now I think it will be easy for you to identify. Notice we have already identified this. In this case, the first boldface as the main conclusion. So any other opinion or a view or a claim would be an intermediate conclusion. And that's exactly what Baker says. The second states an intermediate conclusion that's drawn in order to support that conclusion. Any doubt, guys? Absolutely any doubt in any option?
So, can an intermediate conclusion be an assumption?
Intermediate conclusion cannot be an assumption, by the way. Can someone tell me why? Well, assumption is never stated in the argument, right? That's the reason it's called assumption.
Fair. Okay.
Right? You can't see that assumption in the argument. That's the reason for the name assumption, right? It's assumed. So for that reason, intermediate conclusion, at least in as part of the argument, would not be an assumption.